He thought she was ignoring everyone. In a bustling college hallway, he watched her walk past, head held high, not responding to the friendly hellos from classmates. He scoffed to his friend, "She acts so arrogant. She never replies to anyone." He judged her from afar, creating a story in his mind of a girl who thought she was better than everyone else. Later that day, he saw her in the library, animatedly talking with her teacher. But there were no words, only hands moving with grace and meaning. With a jolt, he realized she was using sign language. The teacher signed back, a warm smile on her face. He felt a lump form in his throat as the truth hit him. She wasn't ignoring anyone, she was born deaf. He stood there, filled with shame, realizing his judgment was completely wrong. He was the ignorant one, the one who made assumptions without knowing her story. Before you judge someone, take a moment to look closer. Sometimes the truth is much louder than words. One afternoon, a man was rushing through a busy street when he saw a beggar sitting by the roadside. He glared at the beggar and yelled, "Go get a job! Stop asking people for money!" He scoffed and walked away, feeling righteous in his judgment. A few minutes later, while waiting for his bus, he saw the same beggar again. But this time, the beggar was using the few coins he had collected to buy a small loaf of bread from a nearby vendor. He then walked over to a corner where two stray dogs were waiting, broke the bread in half, and fed them. The man watched, stunned into silence. He realized with a heavy heart that he was the one who was poor in spirit, the one lacking compassion. Before you judge someone, take a closer look. Maybe they have more to give than you do. One day, a daughter was waiting at home with several long hours before her mother returned from work. She had just failed a test and slammed her bedroom door, convinced her mother didn't love her. She noticed that her mother, tired from a long day, said nothing about the test score but just prepared dinner. The daughter thought to herself, "She doesn't even care about me or my future." She ate in silence, feeling resentful. Later that night, she went to get a glass of water and saw her mother at the kitchen table. With a pen in her hand, her mother was quietly looking over bills, skipping her own meal to save a little extra money. She had a single tear-stained check in front of her eyes. "If I have this," she whispered to herself, "I can pay for her tuition." Too late to take back her anger, the daughter realized with grief that she was the selfish one, the ungrateful, the blind. Before you feel unloved, look closer. Maybe their love is just silent. One day, a boy was sitting alone in his room, scrolling through his phone. He looked up at his friend and said, "No one is real. Everyone leaves in the end." He was convinced that all friendships were fake, just temporary alliances for convenience. He thought to himself, "If I wasn't so cynical, I would believe him when he says he'll always be there." A few weeks later, a window at school was broken during a commotion. He was the one who did it by accident. But when the principal asked who was responsible, his best friend stepped forward and took the blame without hesitation. He was stunned. As he watched his friend get detention, he reached into his heart and gasped with surprise. There was the loyalty he thought never existed. "If he's here," he moaned in despair, "then he was the real one all along." Too late to take it back, he realized with grief that he was the doubter, the cynic, the one who was wrong. Before you lose faith, think about it. Maybe you are the one who is blind. One afternoon, a man was waiting for his bus, complaining loudly to anyone who would listen. He gestured at a group of kids playing nearby and said, "Children today are so undisciplined and have no manners." He huffed, clearly annoyed by their joyful shouts. As the bus pulled up, he rushed forward, eager to get a seat. In his haste, he tripped over his own untied shoelaces and stumbled, his briefcase flying from his hand. Just as he was about to fall, a small boy from the group he had just criticized ran over. The boy knelt down and, with focused little hands, carefully tied the man's shoelaces for him. The man stared, speechless. He had been so quick to judge, so certain of his opinion. As he straightened up, he realized with a pang of shame that he was the one lacking grace. Before you judge others, take a moment to look closer. Sometimes the smallest people teach us the biggest lessons. One evening, a young woman was arguing with her father after he refused to buy her a new phone. She yelled at him, "You never do anything for me! You don't care at all!" The father didn't say a word. He just lowered his head and walked quietly back to his room. She thought to herself, "He doesn't even have the decency to argue back. He's just so passive and useless." Later that night, as she passed his room, she noticed his work shoes by the door. They were tattered and full of holes. Then she looked down at her own feet, at the brand new shoes he had bought her just last week. With a lump in her throat, she realized the truth. "He couldn't buy me a phone," she whispered in despair, "because he spent his money on me." Too late to take back her words, she realized with grief that she was the selfish one, the blind one, the ingrate. Before you judge, take a closer look. Maybe they've already given you everything they have. One day, a young woman was walking through a park, complaining to her friend on the phone. She saw litter scattered across the grass and sighed. "It's so sad how little people care about our planet." She kicked a stray bottle, shaking her head. "If I weren't so busy, I'd clean this whole place up myself." She continued her walk, pointing out every piece of trash left behind by others. When her call ended, she reached into her pocket for her keys. She pulled them out, and along with them, a crumpled candy wrapper. Without a second thought, she let it fall to the ground. As she walked away, an old man picked it up and placed it in a nearby bin. She didn't even notice. She was too busy judging the world, never once looking at her own reflection. Before you point a finger, make sure your own hands are clean. One afternoon, a man sat at a cafe, scrolling through his phone. He shook his head, sighing at the news headlines. He muttered to his friend, "This world is getting so violent. People have no patience anymore." A moment later, a small child running past their table tripped, spilling his juice right onto the man's shoes. The man leaped to his feet, shouting, "Hey, watch where you're going, you clumsy kid!" The child's eyes welled up with tears as his mother rushed over, apologizing profusely. The man grumbled, wiping his shoes with a napkin. "Unbelievable, no respect." Later that evening, as he recounted the story, his friend gently said, "You were just talking about how the world lacks patience." The man fell silent, the child's frightened face flashing in his mind. In his rush to condemn the world, he had become the very thing he criticized. Before you judge the world, look at yourself. Maybe the change begins with you. One afternoon, a young boy was having lunch with his father, complaining about the world. "No one has any manners anymore," he said. "People just don't say thank you for anything." The father listened patiently as his son continued to grumble. A waiter came to their table, refilled their glasses of water, and cleared away their empty plates. The boy didn't even look up, lost in his own frustration. As the meal ended, the father paid the bill and they stood up to leave. Before they walked away, the father turned to his son and asked, "Did you thank the waiter who served us?" The boy froze, his face flushing with realization. He had been so focused on what he wasn't receiving that he failed to give it himself. Before you judge others, take a look in the mirror. Maybe the change you want to see starts with you. One day, a man was walking through the city, his head filled with bitter thoughts. He saw people rushing past, their faces buried in their phones, and thought, "This world is cold and selfish. No one cares about anyone else anymore." Lost in his anger, he missed his turn and found himself completely lost in a maze of unfamiliar streets. He cursed under his breath, his frustration mounting with every wrong turn. "See," he muttered, "in a city this big, you're utterly alone." Just then, a stranger carrying heavy bags stopped beside him. He noticed the man's confusion and asked with a kind smile if he needed help. The stranger patiently gave him detailed directions, even pointing him toward a shortcut. As the stranger walked away, the man stood frozen, his own bag of groceries feeling suddenly light. If his world is here, he thought with shame, then mine was just a reflection of myself. Before you judge the world, look around. Maybe the warmth you're missing is waiting to be seen.